All right, so for this triangle, we have triangle QRS, and it gives us the capital letters are going to represent our angles, and our lowercase letters are going to represent our sides. So opposite of Q is going to be side Q, opposite of R is going to be side R, and opposite of angle S is going to be side S. So it tells us that side R is 5.1, side S is 2.4, and angle Q, and I know it's an angle because it's got an angle mark, is 26 degrees. Now, the first thing I want to make sure I do is identify what type of triangle I have. So I have two sides and an angle. Now, the key here is that the angle is in between those two sides. So I have a side, angle, side, which means that I'm going to use law of cosines. Now, when I do law of cosines, I have to, the general form of law of cosine is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. Now, how do we translate that into other variables? Well, the angle that we have here is going to be angle Q. So that angle is obviously going to go into A. All right, and I have opposite is side Q, so that's going to be the side that's going to be equal to. And then everything else is just going to kind of fall into place with the other pieces. So we're going to translate this into Q squared equals R squared plus S squared minus 2RS cosine of Q. And we're just going to plug in what we know, because the problem is asking us to find the length of Q, so we're solving for Q. So Q squared equals 5.1 squared plus 2.4 squared minus 2 times 5.1 times 2.4, and that's going to be times the cosine of 26. Now, if you'll forgive me, I ran out of room there. So at this point, when we finish this, we're going to take this whole problem and we're going to put that into Desmos. But before I do that, I'm going to do it all in one thing, because I'm going to have to take the square root eventually. So I'm going to do the square root, and I'm going to do 5.1 squared plus 2.4 squared minus 2 times 5.1 times 2.4, and that's going to be the cosine of 26. Now, the other thing I've got to make sure of is I've got to make sure I'm in degree mode, which I have. And I get that Q is approximately 3.2125, which is, they said round to the nearest tenth of an inch, so we would get 3.1 as my final answer for the length of Q. All right, so for my next problem, I have RST. So again, I'm going to just draw a general triangle. Capital letters are angles, lowercase letters are sides. So we have side R is 9.5. We have angle T is 123 degrees. It's not drawn to scale, but that's okay. Angle R is 40 degrees. And it wants us to find the length of S. So before we do that, let's figure out what type of triangle we have. So for this triangle, we have two angles and a side. Now, the side is not in between those two, so this is angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side is going to be law of sines. So law of sines is all about pairs. What are we going to pair up? Well, we know right here that we're going to pair up our R's, because we have angle R and we have side R. And it's asking us to find angle S. Well, we don't need angle T. We need to find angle S in order to find side S. So we want to find side S here. So how am I going to find angle S? Well, that's really simple. All of my angles should add up to equal 180, so we're going to subtract those. And that's going to leave me left over angle S. So angle S is going to be 180 minus 123 minus 40, and that gives me 17. So I now know that S is 17. So we're now going to use S and find side S. So when I set this up, this is going to be the sine of R over side R, and the sine of angle S over side S. So this is going to be the sine of angle R is 40 over side R is 9.5 equals the sine of S, which we found to be 17 over side S. And at this point, we can cross multiply here. So we have S times the sine of 40. Always put your variable in the front, or anytime you have trig, always put your number in the front so that it doesn't actually get mixed up with the actual sine number that you're using. And we're going to do 9.5 times the sine of 17. Now, we want to solve for S here, so in order to do that, we're going to divide by the sine of 40 on both sides. And then we can type it all in at one time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my division to create that fraction. So 9.5 times the sine of 17, and then the sine of 40. And I got the S is 4.32. Now it said round to the nearest tenth of a centimeter, so S would equal 4.3. All right, last example. So I have triangle DEF. So again, capital letters are angles. We have side D, side E, and side F are lowercase. So it tells me side D is 5.3, side E is going to be 2.4, and side F is going to be 4.7. Find the measure of side F to the nearest tenth of a degree. All right, so at this point, we can see that we have three sides. So this is going to be side, side, side. All right, now, one of the important things to make sure of when you have side, side, side is you really do want to make sure you're identifying your opposite sides that you're working with. So looking at the problem, I'm going to start with angle F is what we're looking for. So if we're looking for angle F, that means we're going to be using side F. So my formula is going to be F squared equals D squared plus E squared minus 2DE cosine of angle F is what we're solving for. So now we're going to plug in what we know. So we know we have side F is 4.7 squared equals D squared is 5.3 squared plus 2.4 squared minus 2 times 5.3 times 2.4, and that's cosine of F. Now, you have to be very careful when you split this problem up, okay? So I'm going to start by kind of getting my pieces all together. So this is going to be 22.9. I'm going to go ahead and calculate this section because it's just addition. And that's going to equal 33.85 minus, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply the 2 times 5.3 times 2.4, and that gives me 25.44 cosine of F. Now, the key to this is we can't do anything with this section until we get rid of this piece right here. So we have to get rid of the piece in pink first because we can't do anything with the multiplication. So we're solving this equation like it's a variable. So I'm going to start by subtracting the 33.85 to the other side. All right, so that's going to give me, we have negative 11.76 equals, we now have negative, don't forget that subtraction is a negative, 25.44 cosine of F. Now I can solve for just the cosine by dividing by negative 25.44. All right, and I'm going to divide that out. All right, now we get this irrational decimal. So how are we going to actually solve for F? Now remember, when you solve for an angle, you're going to take the inverse. So we're going to be taking the inverse of this problem. So to solve for f, let's go ahead and take the cosine inverse of negative 11.76 over negative 25.44. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to put parentheses, and I'm going to put cosine into my problem. All right, and we get that f is approximately 0.99, or we could say that, oh, I made a mistake here. I forgot the inverse. So let's go change that. So we're going to do the cosine inverse, and now that makes much more sense. That my answer is going to be approximately 62, and it said round it to the nearest tenth of a degree, so 62.5 degrees is my angle F. Hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, please